So Jai Bhim to all and Namo Buddhaya. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So welcome to you all again. Today we are going to begin the book number 4 of the Buddha and his Dhamma. And so far we have completed the 3 books of the Buddha and his Dhamma. This book number 4 of the Buddha and his Dhamma is devoted to the topic of religion and Dhamma. So Baba Sahib Ambedkar goes deep into what is religion and what is Dhamma. In this book 4, which is titled as Religion and Dhamma, there are 4 parts. Part 1 deals with religion and Dhamma. Part 2 deals with how similarities in terminology conceal fundamental difference. Part 3 is about the Buddhist way of life. And part 4 is about his sermons. So if we look at the scheme of book number 4, which is titled as Religion and Dhamma, we can see that Baba Sahib Ambedkar has gone into defining what is religion and what is Dhamma. And therefore, I think this particular book 4 of the Buddha and his Dhamma is very important because it has a very deep and rigorous analysis of Baba Sahib Ambedkar in terms of how the Dhamma is different from what we say the religion. So we know that Baba Sahib Ambedkar was a student of ethnography and he had studied anthropology. So he was a student of religions, and we know that all his life he was studying all the religions possible. We know that he had studied Christianity, he had studied Islam, he had studied Brahminical Hinduism, more than one can imagine. And he had, of course, studied Buddhism. He had studied the philosophy of various saints in India. And he had studied the philosophers, including the philosophers of religion. And in this book number 4 of the Buddha and his Dhamma, his reflections, his understanding of the concept of religion is very clear. And understanding the concept of religion and the concept of Dhamma is of great importance because sometimes we confuse these two disparate categories. The religion is completely different from what the Buddha called his Dhamma. And unless we understand its difference between religion and Dhamma, we cannot appreciate the greatness of the Buddha's teachings. And we cannot appreciate how Baba Sahib Ambedkar made his enormous contribution to the revival of Buddhism in this country. But if his understanding is understood by the Buddhist anywhere, they can see the freshness that Baba Sahib Ambedkar had brought to understanding the Buddha's teachings. And we are going to look at that today. So this part 1 has, we will see 6 subparts. So among the 6 subparts, we are going to look at the 3 subparts today, and we are going to look at the remaining 3 subparts in the forthcoming class. So the subpart of part 1 is what is religion. So Baba Sahib Ambedkar goes into defining his understanding of what is religion. And the second part is how Dhamma differs from religion. So there is a comparative analysis between Dhamma and religion. And third, the purpose of religion and the purpose of Dhamma. So we see that these 3 subparts are of very important, are of critically important for us to understand. So Baba Sahib Ambedkar, as we know that he was a master communicator, so whenever he wanted to begin discussion on something, he wanted to clarify the terms. He He wanted to define the terms so that he knows that the reader or the listener is having the same understanding that he is having. So of course, he begins with defining the religion, and he declares in the verse 1 of the subpart what is religion, that the word religion is an indefinite word with no fixed meaning. So, a lot of people have defined the religion in different ways. Like we have seen in our study of the philosophy of Hinduism, that so many people have offered so many definitions of religion. So it's a one word with many meanings. This is because religion has passed through many stages. So religion was not something uniform or something static throughout the ages. It has undergone many changes. The concept at each stage is called religion, though the concept at one stage has not had the same meaning which it had at the preceding stage or is likely to have at the succeeding stages. So you see, there are a lot of stages in the religions, and all the stages, all those units of events called religion are termed by the same word. But the preceding concept or the preceding practice of religion was different than the succeeding one, and so on and so forth. And Baba Sahib says that the conception of religion was never fixed. Even today, the concept of religion is not fixed. There are so many definitions of the religion, so many fundamental sort of understanding of religion. So let's look at how the religion has changed over the period of time. So in verse number 6, Baba Sahib says, because most of the phenomena such as lightning, rain, and floods, the occurrence of which the primitive man could not explain, because the primitive man didn't have those intellectual tools that time to understand the phenomena of lightning, rain, floods, as we understand them today, because of the sort of development in the intellectual tools that we have got, the rational tools we have got, the scientific methods we have got. We can now understand what is lightning, we can understand what is rain and floods. But it was not the case with the primitive man, and they couldn't explain it. So any weird performance done to control the phenomena was called magic. Religion therefore came to be identified with magic. So that time the religion, when the primitive man couldn't understand this natural phenomena, they termed it as magic. So anything that deviated from their normal course of life, they termed it as magic. So that was the first stage in religion. Then came the second stage in the evolution of religion. In this stage, the religion came to be identified with beliefs, rituals, ceremonies, prayers, and sacrifices. So in the second stage, the religion from magic moved on to what we can say beliefs, rituals, ceremonies, prayers, and sacrifices. But Baba Ambedkar says that this evolution to the next stage of beliefs, rituals, ceremonies, prayers, and sacrifices is derivative. The primary religion, the pivotal point in religion starts with belief that there exists some power which causes this phenomena. So the primitive people, the people at that stage, the primitive man started believing that there is somebody, some power behind lightning, rains, flood, fire, and whatnot, which deviates from the normal experiences of the human being that time. So the pivotal point in religion starts with the belief that there exists some power which causes this phenomena, which primitive man did not know and could not understand. Magic lost its place at this stage. So the magic lost it. People thought that it's no more logical. There is somebody, some higher power that's being behind all this phenomena. So this power, originally malevolent, it was a very bad sort of a power, but later it was felt that it could be also benevolent. Beliefs, rites, ceremonies, sacrifices were necessary both to propitiate a benevolent power and also to conciliate an angry power. So you see, that's how we see the interplay of two powers that the primitive man encountered in terms of the benevolent power and also the angry power. Because the primitive man thought that there must be some power behind all these phenomena like lightning, rains, and flood, which they couldn't understand. So initially they thought that it was a magic. Later on, they thought that there is some power behind all this phenomena, and they thought that the power could be malevolent and the power could be benevolent. And that power which was benevolent was to be pleased, was to be propitiated, and the angry power needs to be conciliated. So you see, this good and bad we see in all these primitive religions in terms of God and Satan and all these forces we see. So you see how Baba Ambedkar in this very few verses have gone into the heart of defining or understanding what is religion. So later on, that power was called God or creator. Then came the third stage, that it is this God who created this world and also man. So you see the gradual evolutionary steps in the conception of religion. So the religion was not the same. It was considered to be magic. Then it took the form of beliefs, rituals, ceremonies, prayers, and sacrifices. And later on, it began to be centered on what is called the God or the creator. This was followed by belief that man has a soul. So because there is a God, we are created in the image of God, and the concept came like this, that the man has a soul. The soul is eternal and is answerable to God for man's action in the world. This is, in short, the evolution of the concept of religion. You see, in this part one, subpart one, Baba Ambedkar has given us what is the religion, a very conclusive sort of the understanding of religion in a very few verses. Like in 16 verses, he has covered what is religion. So verse number 16 goes like this, that this is what religion has come to be, and this is what it connotes. Number one, belief in God, belief in soul, worship of God, curing of erring soul, propitiating God by prayers, ceremonies, sacrifices. Now these points of the so-called matrix of the religion more or less talks about all the religions that exist today. You pick up any religion, as I said in the beginning, that Baba Ambedkar had studied all the religions very deeply. He was a very profound student of religion. He was a very profound student of the philosophy of religions, and he was an anthropologist. He was trained as an ethnographer, as an anthropologist. And you see, this understanding has become so clear for us to make sense of what is religion and to understand what is religion. And now we move on to the subpart 2, which is very interesting. And I think that this is one of the very interesting parts of the Buddha and his Dhamma, how Dhamma differs from religion. So you see, what is happening here is Baba Ambedkar is trying to establish that the Dhamma is different from religion. How it's different from the religion we are going to look into now. So what the Buddha calls Dhamma differs fundamentally from what is called religion. What the Buddha calls Dhamma is analogous to what the European theologians call religion, but there is no greater affinity between the two. On the other hand, the differences between the two are very great. So you see, between the concept of Dhamma and religion, there is a great difference. They are not same. Buddhism is not a religion, according to what we have seen in the verse number 16 of the subpart. Buddhism is not about belief in God. Buddhism is not about belief in soul. Buddhism is not at all about worship of God. Buddhism is nothing to do with curing of erring soul, propitiating God for prayers, ceremonies, and sacrifices. If we keep this fundamental framework in our mind, we begin to see that Buddhism is remarkably different from the religions that are there. So Baba Sahib says in the verse number 4 of the subpart 2, on this account, some European theologians refuse to recognize the Buddha's Dhamma as religion. That's true, because on these grounds on which the religions are defined, the Dhamma doesn't fit into that. So Baba Ambedkar says very succinctly here, there need be no regret over this. It doesn't matter whether you classify the Buddha's Dhamma as religion. The loss is theirs. It does no harm to the Buddha's Dhamma. Rather, it shows what is wanting in religion. A very profound sentence. It shows what is wanting in religion. The religions lack that. What the Buddha's Dhamma has got, the religions lack that. So what is it? Let's look at the verse number 7. Religion, it is said, is personal, and one must keep it to oneself. One must not let it play its part in public life. Now you see, whenever you talk about religions, people say that it's your public affair. You don't bring it into, don't mix religion with politics, don't mix religion with society, don't mix religion anywhere. Religion is a separate thing. It's your personal thing with your personal God or whatever. That's what we have been told all the time. And that's true, because religion is a personal thing. Everybody wants personal salvation. Everybody would like to go to the kingdom of heaven. Nobody would like to go to the hell. And that's what the people have been trying in different religions, not to end up in the hell, but to go to the heaven. Because that's what personally one is trying to seek for themselves. Now, contrary to this, and this is one of my favorite verses, contrary to this, Dhamma is social. It is fundamentally and essentially so. Now you see, this is something so profound even to think about. When Baba Ambedkar says that Dhamma is social, and it doesn't stop there. He goes on emphasizing it is fundamentally and essentially so. The essential nature of Dhamma is social. It is not nothing to do with individualism. It is nothing to do with the glorification of an individual. It's social, and it's a very deep concept. It's like touching the heart of the Buddha. Touching, completely clarifying for ourselves what the Buddha wanted, how we should practice Buddha's Dhamma. So contrary to this, Dhamma is social. It is fundamentally and essentially so. If Dhamma is not social, it is not Dhamma. That's the logical sort of an argument that Baba Ambedkar has made. And social doesn't mean, pertaining to society. And Baba Ambedkar goes on deeply. It does mean pertaining to the society, but not in that case, that way. So the religion is personal. The Dhamma, as we're looking at the Baba Sahib Ambedkar's framework of it, is social and fundamentally and essentially so. What is Dhamma? Verse number 9 goes into depth. Dhamma is righteousness, which means right relations between man and man in all spheres of life. As I told you, this is, the Buddha and his Dhamma, every single word matters. Every single phrase matters, because Baba Ambedkar has put a lot of thought in developing, in writing this book. You see, Dhamma is righteousness. That's what Baba Ambedkar says. But then he goes into expanding that definition, which means right relation between man and man. That time the language man included women. Okay, it's not a sexist word here, because that time the language was not gender sensitive. So it's man includes women. So Dhamma is righteousness, which means right relations between man and man in all spheres of life, whether it's an economic sphere, it's a social sphere, it's a political sphere, any sphere of life. No sphere of life is excluded. In all spheres of life is such a profound sort of a phrase that nothing is left. Whatever the word that we interact, whether society, economics, politics, environment, whatever, in all spheres of life, Dhamma means right relationship between man and man in all spheres of life. From this, it is evident that one man, if he is alone, does not need Dhamma. Now, this sentence needs to be thought deeply, because elsewhere Baba Ambedkar says that human beings become human beings by the virtue of his relationship with other human beings. Without other human beings, we cannot even survive. That's how profoundly we are linked up with the other human beings. Without society, a survival of an individual is very difficult, not possible at all. Because our brains are social in nature. Our whole being is social in nature. We cannot stand alone. We are dependent on other human beings all the time. So because this relationship is a fundamental fact of life, a single man, an atomized individual, is an impossibility, is an abstraction. an atomized individual taken away out of context of society and politics or whatever, is an abstraction. It is not the reality. The reality is that a man becomes man in the virtue of his or her relationship with other human being. So when there is a atomized individual, the Dhamma is not needed. But when there are two men living in relation to each other, they must find a place for Dhamma, whether they like it or not, neither can they escape it. So when there are two human beings, there has to be some kind of, a place for Dhamma, even if they like it or not. Neither can they escape. Otherwise, how do they survive as a society? How do they survive as a community? In other words, society cannot do without Dhamma. You see what a fundamental logical argument that Baba Ambedkar has gone into. In other words, society cannot do without Dhamma. So there has to be some kind of a righteous connections between two human beings. Society has to choose one of the three alternatives. Society may choose not to have any Dhamma as an instrument of government. What a profound sort of a teaching that Baba Ambedkar has unfolded here. Dhamma is an instrument of government. It's an instrument of conduct, an instrument of laws. Because this gives a lot of clarity to our concept. So there are three. The society is there, whether we like it or not. It has to be there. And the society has to choose whether to have some Dhamma so that it will govern the relationship between two human beings, or the society may choose to anarchy. No rules, nothing. Let anybody do anything they want. Absence of government. Anarchy is called absence of government, means absence of Dhamma, or absence of law governing the relationship between two people. That's what the constitution has got into the depth of when Baba Ambedkar drafted it. Secondly, society may choose the police to govern the people, to govern the relationship between the people. The society may choose the police, which is dictatorship, as an instrument of government. So no instrument of government to the, the dictatorial instrument of government. Two choices. And the third choice is to have Dhamma. Thirdly, society may choose Dhamma plus the magistrate wherever people fail to observe the Dhamma. So what Baba Ambedkar is suggesting, that the society may choose the combination of Dhamma and the magistrate, the government, which is based on the principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity. See how this subsection goes into depth of the entire philosophy of Baba Ambedkar. So thirdly, the society may choose Dhamma plus the magistrate wherever people fail to observe the Dhamma. And as Baba says, in anarchy and dictatorship, liberty is lost, because there cannot be liberty in anarchy and dictatorship. Only in the third, liberty survives. Only when there is Dhamma plus magistrate, Dhamma plus democracy, Dhamma plus the righteous government, then only liberty survives. Those who want liberty must therefore have Dhamma. What a profound sort of a conclusion that Baba Ambedkar has gone into in this part. So Baba Ambedkar is probing further and further. So what is Dhamma? He raises a question: what is Dhamma, and why is Dhamma necessary? So Baba says, the Buddha, according to Buddha, Dhamma consists of Prajna and Karuna, wisdom and compassion. That is what the Dhamma is. It's very profound if you look at it. In the latter Buddhist literature, there is a beautiful word called Advaya, that you cannot separate Prajna and Karuna. It's not possible to separate the Prajna from Karuna and Karuna from Prajna. They are Advaya. They are not two. They are aspects of the same reality that one realizes that there is no inherent reality to be cherished or guarded. There is no me. There is no sense of something belonging to me, or I belonging to something. Then from that depth, what emerges is the compassion. Compassion is not a common word in Buddhism. It's a very deep sort of the aspect of being the Buddha, of being the Bodhisattva. And we are going to look at that. So now what is Dhamma and why is Dhamma necessary? According to the Buddha, Dhamma consists of Prajna and Karuna. What is Prajna? And why Prajna? Prajna is understanding. You see, without understanding, the society cannot survive. The Buddha made Prajna one of the two cornerstones of his Dhamma, because he did not wish to leave any room for superstition. So what is the Prajna is knowing. And in one of the aspects of Prajna is to understand the Four Noble Truths. And one of the fundamental first noble truth is the truth of suffering. So the Prajna entails to understand the suffering. How does it comes into existence? How it can be, annihilated? What is the path which can lead to the, ending of the suffering, the dukkha? So Prajna has a deep connection with suffering. And we all suffer because of our own individual deeds and because of the structures around us, the political structures, social structures, and the cultural structures around us. So understanding Prajna is about understanding Four Noble Truths. And when we are talking about understanding, we are talking about knowing. It's, of course, there is no room for any superstition when we talk about Prajna. Because if there is speculation, then it cannot be understanding, it cannot be knowing, it cannot be Prajna. And it's best, the knowing, it has to be based on what is called the human experiences. So what do we experience being in the world? So Prajna by that way is very, very deep, as we are going to study further. What is Karuna? And why Karuna? Karuna is love. Because without it, society can neither live nor grow. And the evolutionary history has proved that without the power to come together, without the ability to organize the human societies, we couldn't have come to where we are. All the advances in the science and technology are owing to the collective efforts that the humanities has done. Without collective efforts, we cannot succeed. Without love, the society cannot live. Forget live, it cannot grow. That's why the Buddha made it the second cornerstone of his Dhamma. Such is the definition of Buddha's Dhamma. Now see, we compared, contrast with what is religion and what is Dhamma. What do we see? It's altogether different from the concept of religion. So ancient, it's so modern is the definition of Dhamma given by the Buddha. So aboriginal, it's so original. You see the words. Sometimes, you can go on thinking about the way Baba Ambedkar has phrased, this beautiful word, so aboriginal. It's so original. Not borrowed from anyone. It's so true. The Dhamma is the Buddha's realization. It is not borrowed from anybody. It's so true. And 29, a unique amalgam of Prajna and Karuna is the Dhamma of the Buddha, Advaya. It's an amalgamation of the Prajna and Karuna. You cannot just have Karuna or you cannot just have Prajna or Karuna. You cannot have these two. There cannot be Dvaya, Advaya. A unique amalgam of Prajna and Karuna is the Dhamma of the Buddha. Such is the difference between religion and Dhamma. So see how Baba Ambedkar has gone into defining the Dhamma, and by that way clarifying for us how to approach the the Buddha's Dhamma. So this now we are coming to the third part today, which is going to be our concluding part, but very profound in itself when we look at it from the perspective of the two previous parts. The subpart 3, titled as the purpose of religion and the purpose of Dhamma. What is the purpose of religion? What is the purpose of Dhamma? Are they one and the same, or are they different? We have seen they are not same. The answer to these questions are to be found in two dialogues, very interesting dialogues in two suttas, with Sunakhatta and Buddha's dialogue with Brahmin Pottapada. Now, the Sunakhatta Buddha didn't have a direct dialogue, but some Bhagava had a dialogue about Sunakhatta, And very interesting dialogue where Sunakhatta was initially the disciple of the Buddha, and then he left the Buddha and telling other people that Buddha didn't promise, what he wanted. And then Buddha is explaining to Bhagava that this is not the case, because he has never done like this. Buddha has never asked Sunakhatta to live under me. He never promised that he will teach the mystic wonders. Buddha never promised Sunakhatta that, and the Buddha never promised to reveal to him the beginning of the things. So these are like the matters, to be a disciple of somebody, or to promise some kind of mystic wonders surpassing the power of ordinary men, and to reveal the beginning of the things. I'm not going to go into depth of it, but these three things are suffice to say that the Buddha is not promising you to be his disciple. It's very beautiful. There is no force. The Buddha is not forcing us to accept even his teachings. He asks us to follow his teachings only when we understand by our own experiences that this is the case. There is a logic, there is a benefit in following his teachings. Buddha doesn't follow, promises any mystic powers as this particular person has envisioned. No mystic powers, no mystic wonders. And that's it. And the Buddha doesn't promise to explain the beginning of the things. Like, if you look at the theistic religions that we have been talking about, they all promise to explain the origin of the word, how the word was created, where was the God, and all those concepts there are. But in the Buddha never promises that, he will explain you how the things began. In the scheme of Baba Sahib Ambedkar, what is important is the, dukkha, and we are going to look into that at length here. So I'm not going to go into depth of it. I leave it to you for your reading. But three things we have to understand: the Buddha never forces anybody to become his disciple. He has not forced Sunakhatta to become his disciple. He has not promised Sunakhatta that he will work some mystical wonders for him. He has not. Buddha never makes a promise like that, that he will promise us some kind of a mystical wonder. And the Buddha never promises us to reveal the beginnings of the things. So what does the Buddha do? That's very fundamentally important. So you see, the purpose of the religion is to explain the origin of the things, to explain the mystic wonders, to promise people that there will be mystics, that they will be healed automatically and naturally if they follow certain God, or if they go to certain places. Buddha never makes such a promise. So you see, in the dialogue with Sunakhatta, it's very clear. And Baba Ambedkar has in the verse number 31 has pointed out, this illustrates that religion is concerned with revealing the beginning of things, and Dhamma is not concerned with revealing the beginning of the things. Now this section 2 of subpart 3, I think it needs a very elaborative understanding and study, and we are going to go into that. So other difference between religion and Dhamma, as we have seen that the religion is a very different category altogether, and Dhamma is completely different category altogether. So there is other difference which has been brought out by Baba Ambedkar in this section 2, in the discussion with Pottapada. Now this Pottapada is a very unique character. He raises a lot of questions to the Buddha. In a way, we are all like Pottapada. We ask the same question all the time, because these questions are very speculative. They are very flamboyant. They take our mind. They distract us from the reality of the world, the reality that we experience all the time. What are those questions? Let's look at them. So Pottapada poses this question to the Buddha. Is the world eternal? This is a question. Is the world eternal, Shashwat? It's called Shashvatvad. Is this alone the truth, and any other view merely folly? That Pottapada is a matter on which I have expressed no opinion. Buddha says, I have expressed no opinion on this, because it's very difficult to speculate on whether the word is eternal. Then in the same term, Pottapada asked each of the following question: is the world not eternal? Is the world finite? Is the world infinite? Is the soul the same as the body? Is the soul one thing and the body another? Does one who has gained the truth live again after death? Means whether Tathagata lives after his death? Does he not live again after death? Does he both live again and not live again after death? Does he neither live again nor not live again after death? Now, these last four things is not, both is and is not, and neither is nor is not. You see, all the things in the world can be put into this tetralemma. They are called tetralemma, Chatushkoti. Is, something is not, both is and is not, neither is nor is not. Though you see, this has built up the entire Buddhist logical system, because in the traditional logic there are, like, there is the logic of Aristotle, which is called the syllogism, where the two statement, based on that the conclusion is drawn, and it's called the logic of excluded middle. So the things are separated logically. But in the Buddha scheme of things, of logic, things are not separated, things are not broken into pieces. Sometimes there is a merit in breaking up certain things into pieces to understand it. But in the Buddhist scheme of logic, we don't break things into is not, both is and is not, neither is nor is not. So we are, this have become a kind of a logical foundation for the Buddhists to go further. But this is not the topic today. What the Buddha is saying in reply to the questions raised by Pottapad, and these are very, very interesting questions. We all love when we hear these questions. We like to talk for hours and hours about this. Where does the word come from? Whether it's going to die, whether it's going to remain eternal, and so on. They are very flamboyant, speculative questions. They draw our mind towards them, but of no avail to what we suffer. And to each question, the exalted one made the same reply. That to Pottapad is a matter on which I have expressed no opinion. But what has exalted one expressed no opinion on that? Why? Why the Buddha has not expressed any opinion on these speculative questions? Very interesting. Because this question is not calculated to profit. Even if you answer this question, it's not going to profit to the purpose of the Dhamma, that is, to build the relationship between the two human beings. It is not concerned with the Dhamma, righteousness. Whether the word is finite or infinite, it has nothing to do with righteousness. It does not redound even to the element of right conduct, nor to detachment, nor to purification from lust, nor to quietude, nor to tranquilization of heart, nor to real knowledge, nor to insight of the higher stages of path, nor to nirvana. Therefore, it is that I express no opinion upon it. You go on talking about this, you go on speculating about these flamboyant, speculative questions, it is not going to lead us to nirvana. Then what is it that the exalted one has determined? And the verse number 11 is the crux of the matter, the heart of the matter of the discussion we had so far. Let's follow it logically again before I go on to read the verse number 11. Baba Ambedkar begins with defining religion, and he says that the religion has many meanings. It has no single meaning. It has many meanings. And he says that, the religion evolved because the primitive man was perplexed because of the rains, flood, and the natural things which are happening all around him. And he thought that it's some kind of a magic. And then the next stage in the religion was that belief, sacrifices, ritual, ceremony. Why? Because the primitive man thought that there is some higher power that is doing all these things. And he thought that the power is malevolent or benevolent. If the power is benevolent, then propitiate it. If it is malevolent, then, conciliate with it. So that was what was going on. And then in the third stage of the evolution of religion, the primitive man thought that, the God is the creator of me. And I am created in his image. I have a soul. And that was the conception of religion. While Buddhism has nothing to do with any of this. Buddhism has to do with what Baba Ambedkar says, that relationship between two human beings, righteousness in all the spheres of life, whatever sphere of life that there is. And then Baba Ambedkar goes into defining the Dhamma as social. And then he says that a society has only three options. One is to have anarchy, no government, no instrument of government. Secondly, the control over the masses by dictatorship. And Baba Sahib says in both of these, the liberty is lost. What we need is the combination of Dhamma and the magistrate, the constitution, Dhamma and the constitution, the government, where, if the people fail to observe Dhamma, the righteousness, the magistrate will come into picture. And he says that what is Dhamma? Then he goes on beautifully define Pradnya and Karuna. And we have seen how Baba Ambedkar has gone into defining Pradnya and Karuna. And then he has said that the Dhamma is nothing but Pradnya and Karuna. Dhamma is an instrument of government. Dhamma is social and fundamentally and essentially so. And he has defined the purpose of the Dhamma, the purpose of the religion. He has gone into the Sunakhatta and Potapad dialogues, claiming what was the foray of the religion. And now here, Baba Ambedkar is coming to what is the purpose, vision of the Dhamma. Verse number 11. Let's look at it. I have expounded Pottapada, what dukkha is. What I have told. What is dukkha? It's beautiful, because Pradnya is about knowing the dukkha. And when we know the dukkha, the compassion automatically flows. That's why in the Noble Eightfold, Pradnya is the first anga. Right ditti is the first anga. Why? Because unless we understand what is dukkha, we cannot resolve to practice righteousness. So actually the path begins with Pradnya, Sheel, and then Samadhi. Samadhi is Karuna. In the scheme of Baba Ambedkar, we are going to look into it. It's very beautiful. So what the Buddha teaches to Pottapada, I have expounded what dukkha is. The Buddha has expounded what is dukkha. He has taught what is the origin of dukkha. I have expounded what is the cessation of dukkha. I have expounded what is the method by which one may reach the cessation of dukkha. You see, now compare this with any conception of religion. No religion talks about what dukkha is. What is the origin of dukkha? What is the cessation of dukkha? What is the method by which one may reach the cessation of dukkha? And why the Buddha talks about Four Noble Truths? These are the Four Noble Truths. Understanding the Four Noble Truths is Prajna, is the Sammaditthi. So you see, when we have this Prajna, insight into suffering, we naturally have the inclination towards being compassionate. We sometimes reduce the right ditti to a very abstract level, but it's not so. The Buddha's Prajna is about suffering, about understanding the suffering, about what dukkha is, about what is the origin of dukkha, about what is the cessation of dukkha, and what is the method by which one may reach the cessation of dukkha. So, and why has the Exalted One put forth a statement as to that? Because that question, Pottapada, is calculated to profit. Because if we think about the dukkha, if we think about how it comes into being, how we can end it, and what is the method to reach the cessation of dukkha. In Pali, it is called dukkha, dukkha samudaya, dukkha nirodha gamini patipada. We have to, as a Buddhist, reflect on the Four Noble Truths all the time, because that's the way to the nirvana. Without understanding the Four Noble Truths, we cannot attain to nirvana. However logical our minds are, however deeply we are read, but unless we understand these Four Noble Truths, we cannot, practice the Buddha's Dhamma. We cannot practice even Sila. Because how do we practice Sila? Because we know that it produces dukkha for us and others. That's why we spontaneously practice what is Sila. And then comes Samadhi. But in the traditional things of the Dhamma, we see that people are so much habituated to Samadhi. Samadhi is an essential part of the Eightfold Path. But it's the Eightfold Path begins with understanding, engagement with suffering. A very profound, radical conception that is. So because that question, Pottapada, is calculated to profit, is concerned with the Dhamma, redounds to the beginnings of right conduct. You see, because this understanding redounds to the beginnings of the right conduct, to detachment, to purification from lust, to quietude, to tranquilization of heart, to real knowledge, to the insight, to the higher stages of the path, and to nirvana. Therefore, it is Pottapada that I have put forward a statement as to that. In this dialogue, it is clearly put forth what is the subject matter of religion and what is not the subject matter of Dhamma. The two are poles apart. Verse number 15, the purpose of religion is to explain the origin of the world. All the religions are trying to explain the origin of the world, but the purpose of Buddha's Dhamma is to reconstruct the world. And that reconstruction is possible to the Dhamma. That reconstruction is possible to Prajna through Karuna. And what is Prajna? Is knowing the Four Noble Truths. Understanding of the Four Noble Truths. The entire Buddhism begins with the Four Noble Truths, as Baba Ambedkar has brought into being in this particular section number 2. So I think we can begin to appreciate as to how much depth Baba Sahib Ambedkar has taken us into in this seemingly discussion on religion and Dhamma. And I will take pause here and open up for any questions today. But the next 3 sections are also fundamentally very important for us to understand, which we are going to study in the next classes. So let's open up the class for any further discussion. Anything?
Sir, can you put the throw light on the verse number 9 again, sir? 9.
9 where? Part 2, subpart 2 of subsection 3, subpart 3. Because this question is not calculated, this one?
Yes, sir.
This is very, very clear, because this question is not calculated to not concerned with the Dhamma. Because we have seen that how Baba Ambedkar has, talked about how Dhamma is different from religion. And religion is, as we have seen, about the speculative thoughts about the beginning of the world, about the end of the world, whether it's eternal or not eternal, what happens after death, where does the Tathagata go after his death, what happens? So these are all speculative questions. There is no answer to that. And even if there is an answer to that, it is not concerned with Dhamma. It is not concerned with, elements of right conduct. The science is knowing so many things today, but what has happened to the right conduct? The right conduct, or what is called ethics, is still questionable. It doesn't lead to detachment, nor to purification from lust, nor to quietude, nor to tranquilization of heart. You see, this is like logical follow of the discussion that has taken place, particularly, starting from the verse number 1 to verse number 9. If you read it carefully, we begin to know that where the Buddha has arrived in this conclusion. And then it is substantiated by what is beneficial to the human beings, what is beneficial to the society, what is conducive to end of the suffering. So the verse number 11, as I would say, that it's the heart of this particular subsection, where the Buddha talks about, he says that I have taught, Buddha says, I taught only 2 things, dukkha and dukkha nirodh, nothing else. My teaching, if you want to understand 2 words, dukkha and dukkha nirodh, that's it. No speculation there, no rituals, no belief. They might help us, but they are not essential part of the Dhamma. Umesh, does it make any sense to you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Only thought that is striking in my mind when these questions have in our brains, and the answers we have to satisfy our thought with these are only speculations only, no?
No, that's why the Dhamma has to do with your day-to-day experiences.
Yeah.
Dhamma is not about abstraction. Dhamma is about your day-to-day experiences. What creates suffering in your day-to-day experiences, in your day-to-day interaction with you, with your friends, with your family members, with the world around, isn't it? And there has to be some kind of the Dhamma between the human beings.
The thought process originating in the mind is also was no.
I'm not able to get your question
Hello.
because my internet connection might not be stable, or your internet connection might not be stable. Am
Okay,
I clear
okay.
to you?
I will discuss. Yes, sir. My connection is unstable. I will ask later on, sir.
Okay, no problem. Anybody else? Any comments? Anything to share with the group?
Mangesh ji, Namo Buddha.
No, Buddha.
Sometime there is something coming in my mind.
Sir.
There were two chapters. One is Sadhamma you taken up from this book.
Yes, yes, yes.
Today's chapter. These are very vital things for the our community who have just become Buddhist or just started learning. And they have a lot of confusion in their mind. A lot of confusion coming from various directions. They go to some place, say Vipassana, they learn something, and not a meditation, but some books or something. Some teachers come, they teach something, they say something, and the things are, the person who learns,
Right.
well, there's a lot of distraction he takes inside. So these two subjects, two chapters, they are very important to understand what is Dharma, that is religion, and the Dhamma, Buddha's Dhamma. How it is different. Because this question came in when I was attending the university for some certificate course. There's just of curiosity as to what university teaches. And this question came up there. Without the course syllabus, people started asking this question. That means there are a lot of confusion. So Dhamma is very important to understand that Buddhists cannot be behaving any way they want. Like Sikh others also. They are living, they are doing something. I can also be like this. There has to be some discipline. So my point which is like this. You are teaching us in English. I understand that. Many of us are understanding that. But the layman, they don't understand if your videos are reaching them.
Right.
I try this actually. Many ways I try. मैंने साहब वो समझ में नहीं आता है साहब तो सतत नहीं नजर आए so what I'm requesting is these two chapters you can make separately video record it in Marathi and
right. See Arvind Bhau, you are right. As we were having this question in the beginning of the course, and we thought that let's have a few people who are who understand the Buddhism, who are inclined towards knowing Buddhism, and then people can go on talking about what they are understanding in any language, Telugu, Marathi, whatever, isn't it? So I would think that one day there will be somebody who will be giving the talks on Buddhism in Hindi. Okay, my aim in this class is to really clarify as much as I can at this moment. And when it comes to the propagation, we definitely need this Buddhism taught in the regional languages, all languages, isn't it? And I reckon that some of you will be doing this in the future. Particularly, you see, I might not be comfortable in say Hindi or Marathi or whatever, because but some of you can be an expert in that language. Some of you can in the future go on doing that. I will do that. I don't because I am now focused on completing this book for the next 8-9 months. But I take your point, and maybe in the future we will have some lecture series in Hindi, maybe 10 lectures on Buddhism in Hindi, where I would summarize or maybe 8 lectures on the 8 books, whatever. Because it's very deep, as you have seen. Every single word is very deep. I think that I would like to see that culture of studying Buddhism developed in our communities, in whatever languages.
yes,
The engagement, because it has got a depth. It has got that, I would say that, it's something we have to read all the time. I myself get very surprised when I read it again and again, because there is always something left to understand.
Yeah. No, my point is,
I understand your
when
point.
you clarify,
Yeah.
If I have to,
Let's
if
do
I,
it. Let's do it in the future. Arvind
if
bhai.
if I start telling people, I may miss some points. But those are very vital points for the people.
No, we will do it. We will do it. Let me finish this,
Yeah, you should
and
finish
then we will
this.
do it. We will do it. We will do it.
Just to remind you,
Thank you. No, we'll do
two
it.
subjects are, two issues are very important actually.
I will do. I will do. I will do.
This,
Thank
what,
you. Super.
ground level, poor people want to learn, but they don't understand anything actually.
They will. We
They
will
get
do that.
confused,
We will
so they
use
give
all
a
the.
headache.
Yes.
Yeah.
We will do it. We will do it. No problem.
Thank you. Thank you.
One thing at a time, Arvind sir.
Yeah. Sure.
Anybody? If not, then we can conclude our class here today and meet up for the next class on the remaining three sections of this wonderful part 1 of the book 4 of the Buddha and his Dhamma. Thank you so much for joining in today, and see you in the next class.
Thank you, sir. JB.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Namo Buddhaya.